We have CNN analyst Miles O'Brien and CNN terrorism analyst Paul Cruikshank. Gentlemen, thank you both for coming in this morning to discuss this. Miles, let me start with you. This is about a screen grab, right? It shows that there were sensors going off on the windows in the cockpit. And then 2 minutes later, there were reports of smoke in two places: the lavatory behind the cockpit and the avionics under the cockpit. Your take?
Clearly, something was burning on this aircraft, Chris. And what kind of fire, where it began, probably in the neighborhood of the avionics bay, which is right below the cockpit. What started it is the question. It could have been some sort of mechanical malfunction. Maybe it was some problem with some cargo where there's some lithium batteries on there. We haven't seen a cargo manifest. Or was it a small bomb, an incendiary device of some kind? Not big enough to blow this plane instantaneously out of the sky, but enough to bring it down eventually.
Miles, does this jive with this understanding that there have been electrical problems with window anti-ice heaters in A320s? That's what this plane was, the Airbus 320?
This is a known weakness on these aircraft. I don't know if that necessarily was the point of origin here in this case. I think what you saw were a series of breakers tripping, and a lot of it has to do with what circuit they're on or bus and where the location of the boxes are in the avionics bay themselves. So it might be a bit of a red herring. It's something to look at, and it's certainly something, given the history, to focus on. Would that bring this plane down? I am a little doubtful of that.
Brother Cruikshank, terrorists like to brag. We have heard nothing. What does that mean?
Well, it might mean that it's not terrorism, Chris, because we're more than 100 hours into this event at this point, and there's been no claim of responsibility whatsoever from any terrorist group, and that includes ISIS. ISIS has been very trigger-happy in terms of putting out claims of responsibility very quickly. When that Russian airliner came down, they took it down with a bomb over the Sinai Peninsula in October. That ISIS put out a claim of responsibility within 5 hours. They put out all sorts of other statements in the last 100 hours about operations in Syria and Iraq. One of their top leaders in Syria put out a major audio tape over the weekend, but absolutely nothing on this crash. Al-Qaeda in the past has taken a little bit longer, Chris, to take responsibility for some of its attacks, notably that attempt on that Somali airliner in February. It took them 11 days, but that was a failed attack. This was a successful attack if it was indeed terrorism, but we've seen no claim of responsibility so far from any terrorist group. In the social media age, Chris, they put out statements very quickly these days.
Couple more quick points here to make. The fact that this was one of the planes vandalized with graffiti in Arabic, that it was actually one of the planes that got hit at Charles de Gaulle with this graffiti. Does that matter to you, or is it just a random detail?
It's certainly a concerning detail that there was, reportedly, according to the New York Times, this graffiti scrawled on the plane, "We're going to bring the plane down," reportedly by airport workers in Cairo. Certainly brings up concern about potential access to the aircraft, sabotage. But at this point, no evidence yet that this is some kind of nefarious act. It could be mechanical.
Miles, the idea that a submarine is involved is obviously intriguing and also obvious because they're looking for something deep under the water at this point in the Mediterranean. What's the best hope there about what it finds and what it can tell?
Well, we want to hear those pingers, and I haven't heard that they have actually heard them. The submarine is in the vicinity. The main body of the wreckage, as far as I know, has not been located. Presumably, it will all be in a fairly condensed area, and you'll be able to find both boxes, the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder, both of which will be very telling. We have a little hint of what will be on the flight data recorder, seeing that transmission from the ACARS device, the live streaming capability from the aircraft. But the cockpit voice recorder will tell us a lot. One of the things that I'd be very curious about was, were they trying to issue some kind of mayday call, and it just wasn't heard for whatever reason?
ACARS is Aircraft Communications Addressing and Reporting System. Miles, you know that because you taught it to me. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for giving us the latest understanding on all this. And Miles, as you often point out, once again, we see that a plane does not have the same technology that you and I have in our cars that allow you to know where it is, when it is, and how it is. Once again, we're waiting to hear from these pingers again. Gentlemen, thank you. When we get the next round of information, come back to you. Allison.